Okay, I think this is my last stop. So I've made it to the United Way of Salt Lake City. So it's interesting to me because this building looks a lot like the one in the United Way in Philadelphia on the Ben Franklin Parkway. You can see they've got a couple of cells, like cell things on the top of their building too. This is in downtown Salt Lake City, and the reason I wanted to talk about this. Wait a minute, how do I get myself flipped around? Okay. Okay, so the United Way does something called collective impact, and that's impact investing in primarily education outcomes. And I'm just gonna sit down. Sorry, the noise. It's all data driven, and their goal is to coordinate with community partners. And again, the United Way has access to a lot of influential leaders. So they say there are 175 organizations that are some of the most influential systems in the region. And they're working with 4 school districts in the greater Salt Lake area, which Granite, Davis, and Park City, and there may be one other one. They've worked with them at least for the past 5 or 6 years. Salt Lake City was the home of the first pre-K social impact bond. And as we know, if you look up metrics in the pre-K social impact bond in Salt Lake City, even in the New York Times and the Chronicle of Philanthropy, they've questioned the metrics on that social impact bond. That the number of children who were given pre-K who then were not receiving special education services, there was only 1 child out of the 100 that were in that program that ended up getting services. So, even people at the top were questioning those metrics. Goldman Sachs made money on that deal, but the question is, what was actually the benefit to the children that were in the program? I want to speak to this a little bit. The United Way works with Strive Together. Together, they advance something called collective impact. And the idea is to aggregate as much data as possible. They work with the community schools model. So there's the Coalition for Community Schools is one of the partners here. What the United Way does is it puts together the community partners, and then oftentimes it advances having parents sign waivers on the data. So the parents sign waivers either upon registration or after school programs or something, that their child's data be shared with various community partners. Now, some of those community partners are academic support, aftercare programs, but then there are also social welfare programs tied to housing and other services, food pantries, and there's well over 100 partners. So the data sharing is pretty big. And then even so, because Obama gutted FERPA, which is the student data privacy, student data collected in schools for the purposes of documenting impact, it's not well protected. It's not well protected at all. And I have grave concerns about that data, especially as they're pushing health services into schools and counseling and therapeutic services into school. Because not that I don't think that children need good healthcare and mental health support, but once it starts to happen in schools, especially through digital online platforms, those children are being put in a position of being profiled in a way that I think could ultimately harm some of those children in those programs, and all the while creating data that would serve these pay for success impact markets. So one of the programs that they're working on here is on beyond pre-K is chronic absenteeism. And this is important because, as you know, I was a parent in the Philadelphia Public Schools. And back in the day, we were part of a pilot program with Harvard, and Harvard was going to send out letters to all the parents. And it was they modeled it on these letters you might get with your utility bill, where they would say, this is your power usage and this is the usage of your neighbors, and to try to nudge you into better practice around your power usage. And so they were creating letters along these similar lines for absentee rates. But what happened was that even, and while I understand that there are some families that chronic absenteeism is an issue, and those families may need support to help, stabilize their household so that the kids can regularly attend school. That is not the case for the vast majority of people. And many of these people were getting warning notices when their child maybe had 5 or 6 absences, during the school year, which is crazy. And in fact, And it was because this was an impact metric for social impact investing. It wasn't really about quality education. It was about turning children into a metric that could be measured easily on scale and put on a dashboard as an investment opportunity. And the reason why this is particularly important is that one of the people who was harshest around absenteeism in California was Kamala Harris. And she was known for this. In fact, she was seeking out parents to put them in jail when if their child missed too much school. And you know, one of these women was was incarcerated, and her child had been in the hospital. And her motivation in that was not that these children and the families get the support they need, but it was to be really playing hardball with people, because ultimately the data analytics for absenteeism are going to be part of these social impact bond deals. So, you know, the United Way has a program in place called ALICE. It was developed out of the Northern New Jersey United Way. And, you know, Northern New Jersey happens to be where a lot of the hedge fund folks live. So they live in Connecticut and they live in Northern New Jersey. And so it's not a surprise that this would come out of the Northern New Jersey United Way. The idea of, it's called ALICE, Assets Limited, Income Constrained Employed, ALICE, and it's the working poor. And so essentially the United Way has created a structural system of doing data analytics on low-income families to profile them as impact markets. And, you know, one of the people who was involved in the ALICE program, who was connected with Rutgers Newark and setting up the data analytics programs, there was a gathering in Philadelphia with the Philadelphia Federal Reserve and our former mayor, Michael Nutter, called Pathways to Prosperity. I believe it was in 2018, in January of 2018. And the woman who had been involved in the data analytics part with Rutgers Newark, an ally on the ALICE program, attended. And so it was really, you know, I'm sure the people in the central banks knew, you know, a year or two in advance that this reset was coming, that the reset was coming. And they knew that there would be a lot more Alice's. They've run these national campaigns all over the country about Alice. We care about Alice. You know, they set up games and you can role play being Alice. And, you know, I'm not sure, they might even have a virtual reality headset. Like, you can empathize with Alice if you put on the VR headset. And so they have been marketing this ALICE program knowing that there were going to be millions upon millions more Alice's coming online after this global economic reset. And so these families and these children who are caught up in public school systems, that many people who, you know, and I'm not denying that there will be need, but it shouldn't happen that it's in public schools where the children's data is not protected, where the most influential individuals who stand to benefit from these impact markets are setting the rules, gutting the privacy protections, and then potentially putting families in a position of being accused of neglect or some such thing, like we're seeing with the Chromebooks, if people are not logging in regularly, and then that puts them in the crosshairs of child protective services. And this is all bound up in the United Way, and the United, you know, many companies sort of compel their employees to give to the United Way, and we're conditioned to think that, oh, the United Way cares about us, like they're good charitable citizens. But once you understand the social impact space, and once you understand the data surveillance, and once you understand that poverty is now going to be profitable for the people who can control the surveillance system and the data analytics system, it's really dark. And the people connected with our United Way are really a problem. You know, I've gone in to confront them on it, and they kicked me out of their meetings. They won't let me in their building. And so, you know, this is, you know, probably an appropriate last visit for my trip, because a lot of it is running globally through United Way and Strive Together. And if you see collective impact is about social impact investing and data analytics, and it's all about aligning, scaling, automating everything that is totally inhumane in terms of addressing people's real significant needs in the world. So anyway, for those of you who are following along on my field trip visits to Salt Lake City, I am not your normal tourist for sure, but I'll just do one last, and of course, I'll just show over here, it's opposite a WeWork co-working space, right? There we go, for the gigs, right? Everybody's gonna be working on their gig jobs, and Instructure, and you know, Evernym's gonna give you a digital identity, and Instructure's gonna put you on your badges, and you know, the United Way and maybe the various faith charitable institutions are gonna you know, give your family some genetically aligned food for your, food system. And I forgot to say one last thing. When I went in the cathedral of the Magdalene, the Mary Magdalene Cathedral that was opposite the Catholic Relief Services, I almost stepped out, and I actually picked up, because I'm just a sucker for like interpretive displays, a little brochure that gave all of the sort of history of the art and the stained glass windows in there. And there was a Lady of Zion or something chapel, and I was like, oh, I have to see that. It was like this little side chapel, so I went in the chapel. It was this little oak paneled room with stained glass windows, and I sat down on the bench to read the description of what this chapel was, and it actually said that it was created relatively recently to celebrate Vatican II and the ecumenical nature of the Vatican connecting with the modern world. And they actually said that, and I'll show you a picture later, I'll put it in this video when I put it all together, but it was they're like, and this window has the symbol of the United Nations. So the chapel has the symbol of the United Nations in one of their stained glass windows, which is totally, at this point, I am not surprised, but it just feels totally crazy. So, here we're in the middle of, sort of the sphere of influence of, the LDS church, but then the Catholics got it going on too. So, I don't know. I still think that we are engaged in a spiritual moment. And it pays to be sort of connected to your spiritual practice and your creator and how you practice your faith. But I would be very skeptical of institutions at this point. If all institutions, unless you get their promise that they're not going into impact investing, you need to, be very wary. That's what I would say.